Welcome to the Bourbon Talk Show, the ABV Network's original YouTube series where we interview some of the most interesting people from the world of bourbon. Today on the show, we'll be talking to Beth Burrows of Jim Beam and Alex Clark of Fort Hamilton Distillery in Brooklyn, New York. My name is McNew. Please join me in welcoming our host for the evening, Steve Akley.
Hey gang, what's up? Hello. How you guys doing? Great. It is great to be back. Season 3, very exciting. It seems like we were just doing this yesterday, right, McNew? I mean,
it does. It doesn't. We took a bit of a break. It feels like it's been about 6 months, but probably 4. But it doesn't feel like it at all.
Yeah. So, I was glad to see it on the calendar, coming up, and glad to be here. And we're starting out with some great guests tonight. So I want to say hello to Beth. Beth, how you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing well as well. And to Alex. Alex, what's going on, buddy?
Hey, boss. How are you doing?
Good. We will talk to you guys in just a moment. We always like to kick this thing off with talking about a little bit of news. What's going on in the world of bourbon? And let's start this thing out with American whiskey sales grew 6.7% in 2021, McNew. This was driven largely by the return of on-premise sales at bars and restaurants, which started to come back in 2021. They're still off about 19% from pre-pandemic levels, but they are on the uptick. They're going, kind of a straight up thing. So hopefully 2022 is going to be a heck of a year for the industry.
Yeah, I don't think it's declining anytime soon. So I think it's just going to keep gradually growing. More and more people get into American whiskey every single day. It's not going down for sure.
Yeah. Pandemic stuff, again, don't want to jinx ourselves here, but that seems to be going well too. Seems like the numbers are going good. So hopefully we can slowly return to some normalcy and get out there and support our favorite restaurants. And let's make that happen. And, because man, we don't want to be just the chains. That's not good, right?
No.
yeah. Support mom and pop still. So, all right. Next up, Steve Beam announced on an ABV Network. This is exciting. This was like an ABV Network exclusive that Limestone Branch is releasing a special edition of Yellowstone bourbon called Family Recipe. So that should be hitting at any moment now. So be on the lookout for that. This is utilizing, he went through, the family archives and has the original Yellowstone recipe. He made, a batch of that. We're talking not a whole lot here. We're talking about 3,000 bottles, which is a very small release. Beth, 3,000 bottles isn't much, is it?
That's a
because it's a national release too. So it's out there.
Wow.
Yellowstone is kind of everywhere. So you're talking about not a whole lot, into your market. So if you see it, here's the bottom line. If you see it and you're interested in it, grab it. Don't be like, let me think about it. I'll come back. Grab it. I don't know what the retail is. He didn't say that on the event. But,
only 3,000 though. Those 3, are going to be
some of the. I mean, if you think about like the Four Roses limited edition releases, somewhere between 7,500 and 10,000. So and those are tough to get. Think about how hard those are to get. But when you think about this, this is really a small amount. So be on the lookout for it. So definitely. The last one I want to talk about, Key West 2022 was a huge success. And we are announcing that we are all set for 2023, January 24th to 30th. It's our Distiller Summit. We encourage anybody who's interested in. It's a combination of people from the industry as well as fans of what we do. And it's a great time. And McNew had to take the year off because she changed jobs 5 times in 2022.
I had...
and no vacation time. So,
No, and I was fine with it. I was fine with this decision until I started seeing everyone's pictures pop up, and I have never been more jealous. And
it was a lot of fun.
Missing out more in my life.
It's a great time for sure. It's all about, you can make of it whatever you like. I mean, there's people from the industry. There's folks like the Robinsons are there. The Legend was there. Bill was supposed to be there. Came out with COVID literally the day he's supposed to leave. But he'll be there next year. But what I love about it is it's like the group. We keep in touch via text. And you can be a part of the group as much as you like, or you can splinter off and do your own thing as much as you like too. But don't worry, whenever you come back around and you want to hang out with the group is there and willing to embrace you when you are. So make the most of it. If you're more into doing different things like sporting things like snorkeling or scuba diving, you can do that. You can take tours, go to the dry tortugas, whatever you like. But you got the group there. Even if it's just shared, the bottle shares at the end of the night, which is kind of fun at the hotel, back at the hotel. After things are all done, everyone kind of just starts gathering around the pool or in the lobby and just starts pouring. So it's a cool thing. So definitely check it out for 2023. Well, there you go. That's what's going on in the world of news, McNew.
All exciting, all good news.
Good stuff. Good stuff. All right. With that, let's introduce our first guest. An important job of being the American whiskey ambassador for Beam Suntory. I know she does an incredible job of representing her company, getting very creative, bringing a passion through for everything that she does. So please join me in welcoming Ms. Beth Burrows. Hey, Beth, how you doing?
Hey, so good. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Appreciate you having me here.
Yeah, we are glad to have you. And, we've got a lot of respect for what you're doing out there. And, pandemic times, you really hit it out of the park. You were doing some great stuff. You embraced the Zoom or whatever the technology you were using to really jump on and do a lot of different things and kind of keep the bourbon community together during that very difficult time. So thank you for doing that.
Oh, thank you. It wouldn't have existed had people not taken an interest and cared about what I was doing. So I appreciate everybody that tuned in.
Yeah. So the first question, we always kind of just like to talk casually and just get, on a personal basis, kind of get to know you a little bit better. So the first question is, I don't know, if you want to be somebody in the bourbon industry, it seems like you have to have a look. Like Mike Veach has got a look. He's wearing old time suits, wool suits and vests with a pipe and a hat. And Fred Minnick's got the ascot. I've got, the goggles that I wear, and I wear the Hawaiian shirts from Tommy Bahama. But you've got a unique look yourself too, the hat. So tell us about the hat. How did you decide to do that? You don't see you without the hat anymore, right?
It happens.
It
happens. The official events, when I'm doing stuff with cool people, in official capacity, they tend to be sitting atop my head. Really, you were talking about what I was doing during, the pandemic time, beginning pandemic time, which was Sunday port sessions. And so it started as something that I was trying to do at the distillery to bring people to the distillery when they couldn't physically be there. And it was like thinking about what I could do with this rocking chair to help promote it, because it was just me. They allowed me to use the Jim Beam Distillery handle on Instagram. I had a massive audience to speak to, and I just wanted to make sure that I was doing things, organically. And I had some hats at home, and I was like, what if I did a different hat? In the beginning of the pandemic, we were really hopeful. I was like, I'm going to do this every Sunday. Surely it's going to last like 6 weeks. I have 6 hats, totally fine. And then 26 sessions later, and a huge hat collection that I have collected over that time. It just kind of became something where it felt like a finish to an official outing. It was just kind of like, what hat am I going to put on?
Right.
And that's really just kind of where it was in, obsessive compulsion of purchasing hats during the pandemic time.
Right. I would almost feel let down. Like if I bought a ticket to an event and Beth is there and she doesn't have the hat on, I'd be like, what? Something's wrong here. Do I get back half the money or something? I mean,
if there's any milliners out there that want to help sponsor the things on my head, you let me know. Cause I'm always looking for cool and different unique hats. I do have some in the collection. The first hat that I ever got was from Adam Harris, who was an American whiskey ambassador for Beam Suntory alongside me, who has now been promoted within the company and is on to doing some really great things. Still working with our side of the business, but really exciting stuff for him. And we were at a spot in Texas where he is from, and we were, I'm pretty sure, drinking Midori mind erasers. We won't talk about how that night really went. But at one point in time, he had an LBJ Stetson on his head and he put it on my head and he was like, that's your hat now.
Really?
And
that's nice.
Like the sweetest thing ever. And I'm like,
he's a great guy.
He's going to call. He's an amazing guy.
He is a just unbelievably nice guy. And it's an industry filled with nice people, but there's some that just stand out within even that. And he's definitely one of those people. He is a super nice guy.
He is. I expected a phone call the next morning for him to be like,
right.
Hey, I didn't really mean to give you that hat. But I did get a phone call from him and he said, look, sometimes I give people things that they don't necessarily want because I like to give people things. And he was like, so if you don't want it, you definitely don't have to keep it. And I was like, oh, no, this is my hat now, but thank you. And so that's kind of like where it started with the collection, and it's just, grown from there, and port sessions just took it to the next level. So
yeah, very cool. Well, tell us a little bit about your job, because your job is very unique, and I almost see it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I almost see it like you have a blank canvas and you can really make it what you want it to be. I'm sure you have goals and things like that, but at the end of the day, it seems like you're able to curate what exactly that job looks like, which is very cool. And you do an amazing job of, and that's why you're so special at what you do. But tell me a little bit about the job.
Yeah, so we are very trusted. We embody our brands, right? We're meant to be out in the world and kind of personify all of the things that we, bring from the James B. Beam Distilling Company. And, Fred and Freddie can't be everywhere, of course. And so, we are no Fred and Freddie's, but we're out there, trying to spread the good word of the James B. Beam Distilling Company. And so there's myself and there's 3 other American whiskey ambassadors that cover the United States. We are waiting, hopefully, to have a new person in the central position, which is where Adam just left from. So big shoes to fill, but really excited to add to our team and take this on. But really, it's about each unique and individual person and where we're doing all of the things that we're doing, right? The events, the activations, the educations. We're meant to go out and educate, and we get to do that in really fun, entertaining ways. We call it edutating sometimes, which is just a silly thing. But what we're trying to do is take all of these amazing American whiskey brands that we have and bring them to life and show our love for all of them. And hopefully it's contagious and other people fall in love, with these brands, with their flavor profiles, with the story, the fact that we have 200 and almost 27 years of family history and whiskey making is insane. And the fact that we're still doing it here in 2022, made it through 2 pandemics and prohibition where we didn't make whiskey and all of these things. So my job is really just to bring personality to life with these brands out in the world. And I get to do things like throw drag bourbon dinners where we educate on Basil Hayden, but we also have an amazing drag show going on with this fantastic dinner. We get to do things like this glass that I have here that needs whiskey in it. But it's the Knob Creek Jogging Club that we did last year when bartenders were down and out and not behind the bar. And we wanted to make sure that they still had a community to be around, with like-minded people and people who were going through the same things, and also keep their body in good condition to get back behind the stick as soon as everything opened back up. And so we had 100 bartenders across the United States in the jogging club with us. And nobody was jogging. Jogging's not cool. Soft J, right? People are runners, but we're joggers. And, anybody can be a jogger because jogging is about how you feel and what you saw. And anybody can do that, right? With the capabilities of just getting out there, right? It's just about how you feel and what you saw. It's not about the actual, it is, but it's not, right? So, yeah.
Absolutely.
So cool stuff. We get to do really cool things.
Yeah, you do. You have such an amazing job, but those that know your story know that you were a very successful, career as a bartender at Down One Bourbon Bar. So tell us about that, award winning and tell us about your bartending career.
For sure. So bartending started for me way back when I was allowed to, so 20 in a day in the state of Kentucky. And it led me to Down One. And I was speaking to someone recently about this kind of journey that I had been on, because if it hadn't been for all of the things leading up to the moment when I reached out to someone and said, hey, this place is opening up, I could really use a job. I was in business liability insurance, and no offense to anybody in insurance, not the game for me. I literally got into this and thankful for the company that hired me and all the things that I learned, because I learned corporate structure in that space. And had that not happened, had I not absolutely hated it, I wouldn't have reached out and gotten back into the food and beverage industry. And Down One was hiring. They were hiring for a serving position only. And I was like, done, in, let's go. And they hadn't opened yet. So I had this opportunity to sit with master distillers, go visit distilleries, just learn and soak up as much knowledge about American whiskey and bourbon in particular as I possibly could. And got to be a part of the launch of this really cool space. And so moved my way up, ended up behind the bar, loved it, loved every bit of making craft cocktails, of thinking about bourbon cocktails, learning about the history of cocktails and American whiskey and all of those really cool things. And so started doing competitions, won a few, lost a few, got kimchi all over my face one time from a cocktail that went horribly wrong on stage. So, it was a really cool experience. And that led me into being able to manage. And so I was the general manager of Down One before I left to take this position as American Whiskey Ambassador for Beam. So it was a journey, but it was super valuable. Everything that I learned in that space to what I do now, and everything that I learned leading up to that moment. It's pretty crazy how serendipitous it is, but
Yeah. A bourbon expert these days seems to be a title that individuals give themselves, whether they know the rules of whiskey or they feel like they know a lot. And I always feel like I can vet people out pretty quickly. Just having a conversation where they don't think I'm probing about bourbon knowledge or anything like that. I can feel them out and know exactly what they know. And you're one of those people that passes with flying colors. I mean, because you're the type that I have the true respect for, because you know your brand, you know the products, you know everything there is about production and all that, but you know all the bourbon history, and you know the company history and about the people and all that. You could talk about anything, you could share stories that I've never heard. This is the stuff that I love. So tell us about that dedication to that sort of learning to your job, and how do you do that?
When you love something, you just want to learn more, right? You just
Mhm.
want to be a part of it deeper and become, more entwined in it. And I think that's what happened with me in American whiskey. I dipped my toe with bourbon and I fell full-fledged into the lake of whiskey that I am happily swimming in. Because it's just, when you think about all of the things that go into it, are you wanting to learn more about science? Cool. Then go into the actual, process of what's happening when, bourbon is being distilled and going through the entire process that it takes to get what you have in your glass. Are you a history buff? You can learn anything that you possibly want to learn about the spirit, which also leads to more spirits, right? And you want to gain more knowledge because you want to see the comparisons and see how it differs from spirit to spirit. And if you want to be in the cocktail game, you can, experiment with that, or flavor profiles when it comes to what you're pairing, right? So it's never boring. There's always something more to learn. There's always something more to do. And there's always an avenue that just sparks love and excitement. And I think that when that happens, you just continuously want to delve deeper. And so, I mean, it's not hard. You just, when you love
Right.
what you do and you love what you're around and what you're doing, and I'm surrounded by inspirational people all the time. This is such an amazingly cool community of people. Not only do we have our service industry side, but we also have our enthusiasts, and we have, bourbon experts, whether they're self-proclaimed or not. And even the people that we don't necessarily want to spend a lot of time with, we can still learn something from them, and we can learn something about their bourbon journey and their experience, because we're all on a bourbon journey. Some of us just don't know when we've started, or haven't realized that we've started yet, right?
Right.
And we can all talk about that and kind of just weave our own stories in what happens in our life. So
Yeah. We talked about the latitude that you have in your role, and the fact that you're coming up with how you do these things and various events and stuff like that. What inspires you to create different events? Is it just, at the end of the day, you're a fan and you do things that you want to do? Because I often find myself doing that with shows and stuff like that. It's like, I want to learn about this, let's do a show about this, we'll all learn. Or there's something cool I want to do, McNew, let's do an event where we go do this. And it's just really, it's me fulfilling what I want to do, and then having friends around me doing that stuff with me too. So is that how you do it, or tell me about your inspiration?
I think it's multifaceted. It's not always the same in what kind of sparks interest or excitement. I mean, of course, there's the stuff that's like, I would really love to do this, and I bet other people would really love to do this too.
Right.
But for me, coming from the space that I come from, I'm 34 years old. I am female and been in this world for quite some time now, which is predominantly a male dominated space, even with people who are enjoying the product,
Mhm.
and they tend to maybe be a bit older than me. And so I spend a lot of time proving my worth, if you will, in the space. And I think because of just what we love and what we love to do, it's I don't know, it just kind of comes from a place of, I think this would be really cool. And if I'm in this space, why are my brands not in this space? Or if I am in this space and my brands are in this space, how do we make sure that we're showing up not only in person and saying that we're showing up, how can we truly show up in these spaces? Working on community events is a huge thing for me. working in spaces that American whiskey doesn't usually play in, speaking to women without having to be a woman in whiskey, and isolating ourselves into a weird space of saying, oh no, we can only just be this group of women in whiskey, because again, we're all on a whiskey journey and trying to figure out where we want to go next, and who is close to us in our journey, and what their journeys were like. So I think talking to people and getting that inspiration, and again, being surrounded by inspirational people who you can say, I think this would be really cool, and they say, you know what would be even cooler if you did that and this. And then this, something just builds into more than you ever knew that it could possibly be, and that's really cool.
Yeah. Well, we've got an exciting moment here because our format is a little bit different for season 3. Right in the middle of our interviews, McNew asked a question this year, and we don't vet it out. She just asked this off the top of her head or something.
So much trust, sure. McNew.
Yes,
no
I mean, so much. So let's. What do we got here, McNew? What's your first question ever to Beth here?
Okay, I hope it's a good one. So the ABV Network, every month we do a cocktail contest that just throws out bizarre ingredients sometimes. And cocktails are a big part of your job. So what is the strangest, weirdest ingredient you've been asked to use or chosen to use, and how did it turn out?
Okay, so I think I already threw it out there.
The kimchi?
Talking about the kimchi. Yeah, hitting me in the face in a cocktail that went horribly, horribly wrong on stage in Lexington. That's probably one of the more interesting things that I think I was using, because I was using it way before, we've gotten to the world that we're in now, where you see things that are honestly super common that you wouldn't have maybe seen as a super common thing back then. I did a gin cocktail once called the Holy Hand Grenade, where I used wasabi.
Ooh.
And you got to decide how much wasabi you actually wanted in the cocktail. So there's a Holy Hand Grenade where you would break the chopsticks apart, and the whole thing would fall in, and you would stir it up. Or you could take it off and then, just kind of put as much in there as you possibly wanted. So that was a fun one. Snap peas. I made a snap pea cocktail once.
I love snap peas. I know a lot of people
I do
don't.
Too.
I can't imagine them in a cocktail though, so that's interesting.
I'll have to send you, my thought process behind that. And that was inspired by picking sugar snap peas with my grandfather. I used to do it all the time. And so I wanted to make a cocktail in honor of him. And I was like, what can I do with sugar snap peas? And it turned into a whole thing. But super fun cocktail, super weird, but really fun. And I really liked it. So, I do it for me.
Nice. Well, nice job, McNew. That's a good question.
That's a great question.
And, yeah, she did good. Absolutely. So this is going to be an exciting new thing that we'll be doing. So Alex, get ready. You're going to have one of these too when we talk to you.
Don't say kimchi.
Beth, what's the favorite part of your job? What do you love doing the most?
People, being around people. That was really, just take that for what it was. I didn't mean it. So it was a phrasing moment. Sorry. I heard it after I said it, but being around people, being around the inspiration of people who are excited about this, because, my job is a lot of other people's play. It's what they get to do in their time of leisure and their time of, what they decide that they want to do. And sipping whiskey just happens to be a part of that. It happens to be my job. And so, showing up to work, I get to experience other people's leisure and joy. And I think that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah. It is kind of it's a cool industry because you are, if people are coming out to events and stuff like that, they're having fun, and you're hitting them at a very, fun time in life. So it's definitely
they chose to come, right?
Exactly.
I think that's one of the coolest things is, people are interested enough to say, yeah, I want to be at that. And that's, everybody wants to be there, which is really awesome.
Yeah. So you get a lot of insight and access from, the Beam/No family. So you have this unique access that most of us don't have, but are very envious of just as fans. And, is there a story you can tell us maybe that we don't know, that's something that you've come across that you thought, this is pretty interesting?
I think it's really cool. When I was super green after I got this position, I wanted to learn more. And so anytime that people were willing to speak to me about anything, I would just sit and listen. And I threw a birthday party for Baker Beam And the very beginning of when I got hired, we called it, it was his 81st birthday. So it was, this big, Baker being 81st birthday thing. And to do that, I wanted to put together an education for all the people who are helping me throw the party. And I was able to sit down with Fred and Freddie and Baker and, other family members who just poured stories out that aren't in books, that aren't in, because they aren't like the cool, flashy things that I think everybody is looking for when they're reading the books or listening to the interviews, right? Like the things that are very, in your face about their life.
Yeah.
The super mass marketing ones. But for me, the really cool stories are the ones that are either super personal about something that happened with, a feeling that they had, or, something that sparked their inspiration. So I would say, like, I can't think in particular with one with Freddie right now off the cuff, but like a lot of the context that he gives with all the times that he sat with his granddad, those have been really amazing. But I think one of the coolest things for me was when I was sitting down with Baker, and he was talking about just what it was like to go through the process of nobody liking bourbon. And, when the family was finally funded after Prohibition and really started churning out the whiskey, and people were like, we're good. That was a pre-prohibitionary thing. And, now we're on to our clear spirits, or now we're on to our 3 martini lunches, or whatever it might be. And just the things that we learned from everything pre-prohibition to that period of time. So like what we learned from World War I moving into World War II, where we had distilled only for the war effort and didn't have whiskey afterwards, after World War I. And in World War II, we said, we need to distill for ourselves as well. And that's when we went to a longer distillation during the week. And, it just changed the way that we did business. And so things, again, that people probably would not think about or need to read in a book. But for me, going, that probably was super instrumental in why we operate the way that we operate today. And it's all because of a learning that we got from something that was a national, situation that everybody was in, and just how it affected that family in particular. So yeah, I'd say that was probably one of the cooler things for me, is just getting that kind of historical context, and then being able to say, oh yeah, American history was going on at the same time as family history. Let's go ahead and merge those timelines in my brain, and really start thinking about, cause and effect. So
absolutely. Yeah, there's that, it's nonstop through the start of American history, where whiskey is just interwoven with the regular history. So it's kind of
you saw my timeline tasting.
Absolutely.
You saw what I
yeah, absolutely. We're still early in the year here in 2022, so we got basically almost the whole year in front of us. What sort of things do you guys have planned for 2022?
You're going to see some cool, expressions and liquids come out. So just one, keep checking the TTV, because I know y'all are. So keep looking for those cool labels as they come through. But, for us, it's just making sure our money is where our mouth is, right? We've shown up a lot in the community and a lot in spaces over the last couple of years. And we made a promise that we're going to continuously show up in those spaces. It wasn't just a one and done thing. And so I think as you start to see all of the cool programs that are going on, which are also in the finalizing phases, so I don't want to necessarily say, hey, we're going to do this, and then people, how it is, right? Sometimes it comes to life and sometimes it doesn't. We don't really know what this year is going to look like, but we have some really cool things on the horizon. And for us, I mean, the distillery, it's brand new, y'all. If you haven't been there, go. It's very exciting. If you ever wanted to see a waterfall at a distillery, cool, come see us. We've got that. And really just kind of opening up more information to people, because now, we know who our bourbon enthusiast is that's visiting us. It's a more educated and more, enthused individual at this point, right? And they want to know more and delve deeper. So you get the opportunity to really do that at the new distillery. And I think that's what, we want people to come home. We want people to come to the home place. We want you to see what's new and exciting. And we'll talk to you about it there when you have some awesome liquid in your hand and you're standing in Claremont at the home place.
Yeah. I do like the idea that the distillery is home, and because believe me, the fans of Jim Beam feel ownership in that brand. If you don't think so, try to change something about it and they'll come after you. I mean, yeah, fans definitely feel ownership in their favorite brands, and Beam certainly is one of those iconic American brands. And yeah, so it's kind of neat that this is presented as home, and you got the kitchen table even. It's awesome stuff.
I mean, yeah, every piece of it is actually something that means something, right? For us, it's, and I know that a lot of distilleries are that way, right? Not to downplay it for anyone else, but there's so many things that are very personal that are interwoven. So much so that the Fred Bino distillery opened on the premises, which is a brand new building, a brand new distillery, and something that Freddie is heading. When you walk in, it says to family past, present, and future, and it's just everything is so interwoven. It's really cool to see come to life.
What do you like to do outside of whiskey? What are some of the other interests that you have?
So I am really into photography. I have been my whole life.
Cool.
So I like to take my camera out, and whether that be working, I like working with dogs and kids, because they're two things I don't generally get to work with in my job, right? So yeah, just kind of chasing with my camera and capturing moments or capturing things like that. That's something that I've really loved. I was telling you all, like, they're bourbon centric, but like these are my photographs above me, and my whole office is just full of cool photographs and memories and things that I like to surround myself with. So that and serial killer documentaries.
Yes, that's a thing. That's a thing for sure. I don't really get it, but it's definitely a thing.
You get it or you don't. It's
right,
fine.
Right. Last question for you. Now, this one, we always get a little goofy on the last question. So that, just being upfront, this is a goofy question. But that being said, this one, there is a right answer and a wrong answer, and your two hosts here disagree on what the right answer is. They have different views. So I'm not going to try to lead you in any way. I just want to ask this question.
Just laying the groundwork.
And I don't want to push you towards my point of view. I want you to answer yourself, and hopefully you end up answering this the correct way. And if not, I may have to just let you go here. We'll see. Question number, the most important one here: Pop-Tarts. What's the best flavor? And then the most important part of the question, though, is the second part of it. Is it toaster or no toaster when it comes to Pop-Tarts?
Okay, so the right answer about the best is going to be the brown sugar cinnamon. Okay. And it's toasted. Now, the best untoasted.
Toasted.
The best untoasted, if you're going to have strawberry, it needs to be untoasted.
Yeah, the frosted strawberry, untoasted. It's the way to go.
I don't disagree that untoasted is okay. It's not horrible. But I do feel like you're upping the level when you put that in the toaster. McNew doesn't like him in the toaster at all. She likes none of them in the toaster. She says you're ruining it, or ruining it, as she says with her Indian accent. You're ruining it. So
I get where you're coming from, but I think the brown sugar cinnamon has to be toasted. If there's something about it that's just, it's better.
We're a society, and we've come up with inventions that improve our lives. Let's use them.
You know what improves your life is when you take a little bag of Pop-Tarts out the door to the car. So
that's how I learned that the strawberry ones are better untoasted, is because I was like, I gotta go, and then
right. Okay,
I understand.
For the record, though, Beth did say toasted, and McNew is anti-toasting, so I won that one. Maybe we'll have to throw this out every once in a while and keep a tally, but right now I've got the lead. Yeah. Well, Beth, thanks so much for joining us. We'll bring you back at the end to share, website, all that kind of stuff. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Appreciate y'all.
Please stick around, and then and we'll have Q&A at the end too after we turn off the camera, which is nice. All right, what we're going to do next, we'll take a quick break, and then when we come back, we're going to be talking to Alex at Hamilton Distillery. We'll do that in just a few.
Today's show is sponsored by Moonshine University. Moonshine University offers programs to assist individuals in the bourbon industry or simply fans wanting to step up their knowledge. Whether you are looking for in-person learning at the classrooms of Moonshine University or looking for self-study online, there are options to fit your unique needs. Check them out at moonshineuniversity.com. We are also sponsored by the ABV Network's Distillers Summit in Key West, Florida. This 6-day event features events and networking opportunities from January 24th through 30th, 2023, when there's no better place in the world to be except sunny Key West. Get more information on our website, abvnetwork.com.
Yes, don't miss out. It is a lot of fun, and yeah, it's going to be bigger and better. So for those that have been to Key West, we did it first in 2020, pre-pandemic, because we're in January, and had a great crowd. I think about 25 people, and we thought, well, we'll double that at least the next year. And of course, pandemic happens. We did have it though, but only like 7 people or something like that. And then we had it this year. Comes back, we had 40. And I anticipate, probably at least 60 next year. So should be a good time.
I am so excited to get back next year. Missing out this year about killed me.
Yes. All right. Well, our next guest is founder of Hamilton Distillery in Brooklyn, New York. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Alex Clark. Hey, Alex, how you doing, man?
Hey, Steve. Thanks for having me. Hi, McNew. Having me too.
Absolutely. So I think the voice, the accent is a little bit of a tip off. You're not from Brooklyn. So tell us about your life growing up and then how ultimately you get here. Tell us about that.
I grew up in London, England. And, my dad would throw me and my brother in the back of his Volkswagen camper van in the summers. We'd drive around France and Spain, Italy, campsites and all that stuff. And I think that's how I kind of got exposed to food and beverage at a young age. And, fast forward a few years, I finished university and got a job, which I didn't much like, doing financial stuff. And just before I was going to quit, they were like, hey, you want to move to New York? And I was like, okay, I'm just going to throw out that resignation letter and jump on a plane to New York. See what happens. Turns out I still didn't like the job in another continent. Right. But I did love New York City, and eventually quit the job and went back to my main love, which was music, and was a professional musician for a little while. And then,
what did you play, by the way?
I was actually a disc jockey and promoter back when that kind of meant something, I think.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. And during that time, I met my wife, my beautiful wife, Amy, co-founder of the Fort Hamilton Distillery with me. Yeah. And she got pregnant with our son, Andreas, in, I think, 2006. Okay. And so I had to get I was like, I think I've got to get a real job now. Yeah, no more nightclubs and discos. And so I went straight into bartending, the real job right there.
Right.
And I was lucky enough to know a guy called Sasha Petrasky, who had a bar called Milk and Honey, which was pretty much ground zero for the cocktail renaissance in America and then the world. And he gave me, I was like, put me behind the bar. And everyone thought this would be hilarious because what's a DJ going to do behind this cocktail bar? But little did they know that I'd actually bartended in the UK all the way from the age of 17 through to about 23 when I left and moved to New York. Okay. In summers and bartending my way through university to make extra money. Pulling pints, pouring shots. Right. But I was good at pulling pints and pouring shots. I was no make weight. And so when they put me behind the bar in the Lower East Side Company bar, it was not Milk and Honey, but their sister bar, East Side Company. I was kind of a blank canvas. They kind of molded me, taught me how to make the classic cocktails the right way, with no preconceptions, because pouring a Guinness and making a Manhattan are quite poles apart, really. So there were no bad habits to unlearn. And they taught me, I got taught by, some of the best people in the business, if not the best at the time. And, there was Mike McElroy and Sam Ross out there who, are now legends in their own right. And it was quite a thriving scene, and it was an exciting scene. And from there, I left and worked in a restaurant called Balthazar, a very famous French restaurant in the city, really learned how to do volume and fine dining as well. And then ultimately, a friend of mine wanted to launch a distillery. And so he hired me to help him and be the director of sales. And we ended up launching the Widow Jane Distillery in 2011. And that's kind of how I really started to cut my teeth, move up the food chain into production and sales from, bartending originally. But
So
Yeah.
was that a clean sweep? Did you move, jump all in with Widow Jane, or did you still do the bartending thing and just,
No,
Widow
I was
Jane?
all in. I was all in, but there was
Okay.
also, as I'm sure Beth knows, there's, you wear more than one hat. It's, there was a bar attached to the distillery on one side and a chocolate factory as well. So we were making bean to bar chocolate. We were making whiskey. We were also bartending and throwing it all together. I developed a cacao rum and a cacao rum liqueur and, all of that. And then all around, and then the Widow Jane brand kind of grew out of all that. But, there was opportunities to bartend there as well. And then obviously you're doing events, you're doing shows, you're trying to throw happenings where people can have a cocktail. So you wear a bunch of different hats, and it helps to be skilled behind the bar without a doubt, because, then you can really understand, what it takes to make a drink, and what makes bartenders tick, which is important when you're developing brands. Like, you can just make something up in your head and throw it out on the street, but does it actually make sense to a bartender who's really going to be your best salesperson? Right. And people often overlook that, and I think that's one of our superpowers at Fort Hamilton, is that we really do come at this from a food and beverage background, and not really a Wall Street background. So the problem is I don't have much money, but the good news is we understand what the problem is.
Right. There you go.
Yeah.
If we shut down this meeting today and I get thinking I'm going to open up a distillery, I feel like I would immediately suffer from paralysis by analysis, because there's so much that goes into it. There's all the paperwork and the documentation at different levels, state, local, federal, and then the financing thing that you talked about, and then you got to learn how to make a product. But you can't just make a product, you got to make a great product. So there's so much stuff you got to learn. You got the equipment, and the equipment doesn't just work smoothly all the time. You got to know how to fix it and stuff like that. Stuff's always going wrong. So as you get into this, you decide you're going to open a distillery. What went into that? And then tell us, now that you've had the benefit of that being behind you for many years, tell us a little bit about, if you could go back, what things would you do differently?
I would have told myself to not do it. That would be the first thing I would have done. And don't be so bloody stupid. And honestly, if I'd have known now what I do, if I'd have told old me what new me knows, I don't know. I don't know what I would have said, really, because I've had such an amazing adventure getting to this point, and met so many fabulous people, and every day it's fun. And to Beth's point about people being the key, as a bartender for years, it is, it's all about making relationships, and it's all about having some fun with it. Don't take it too seriously. But there is, I think I was lucky to get exposed to, the business and the first wave of the craft distilling scene in America, really. I mean, you can go back to like St. George in the 80s, which is technically the first wave, but realistically, since the late 2000s, that's when it's really started to bubble. And Widow Jane was definitely in the first round of all that. And it was relatively easy to sell whiskey back then. There was less competition. People were more interested in new products, and there was less what's the word? People were less tired and there was less saturation in the market too. So it was a great scene, and it was a lot of fun, and people were just buying whiskey, hand over fist. They couldn't help themselves. And so I think, I got this kind of view of it which is very positive, and we came out with a very positive result with Widow Jane. It's easy to think that that's just going to be like that every single time that you do it. Right. But, the market matures, customers mature, people get smarter, your products have to be better. But one thing that I think I did do right was really focus on branding for Fort Hamilton, and kind of make that the cornerstone of the brand from the get-go. I think that's what a lot of people don't quite get right is, they might make a really good whiskey, but nobody's quite sure what the brand name is because it's written very small on the label and there's other information that's larger. And I think that, getting a good story out there and trying to get into something that's perhaps not been done completely before,
right,
is important too. So, if I'd have launched Fort Hamilton in 2015, 16 with a focus on bourbon, which I didn't. I'm sort of more rye focused company. I think we might have had a slightly tougher time because there's a little bit of fatigue in the market out there. One thing I would tell myself is that it's all about the inventory, right? And I think that that's something that why legacy brands succeed and continue to succeed is that they have, decades of barrels under the belt. And the hardest thing for a brand, I mean, like Widow Jane, we're sourcing inventory more than anything. So that's kind of an easy thing to do so long as there's whiskey to buy. Right. Fort Hamilton, we're more about actually making whiskey from scratch, which is actually a much harder business model.
Of course, yeah.
And again, like if I had a crystal ball, I would have gone back to me in 2011 and said, go tell you in 2001 to start making a lot of whiskey. Yeah. That would be the real smart play. Go get a time machine.
Yes.
Time machine is what you need in this business. Yeah. Time machine is what you need.
Get a DeLorean and get that thing up to.
That's exactly right. Yeah. Invest in that DeLorean immediately.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, building inventory, man. And that's one thing that I've done with Fort Hamilton and try to defend as much as possible. It's so weird. You start the business and then you're immediately trying to not go broke because you're trying to not sell whiskey. And that's the difference between sourcing whiskey and really making whiskey from scratch. And so after quitting Widow Jane, the first thing I did was get back behind the stick, start bartending, and not take any money out of the business for 5-6 years. And just any money that we made from sales, we reinvested immediately in barrels. And we're just building that barrel inventory, building and building and building. Now we're kind of at a point where we're getting some real traction, and we've got a lot of barrels under our belt. We've got some really delicious juice coming out too, and already out and coming out. So, we're seeing things kind of start to take shape. Even my wife is starting to realize that this isn't so crazy.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
You're, and of course, we're talking about branding, and your distillery is surrounded by artifacts in the history of the Revolutionary War, and obviously named after a founding father, a great American patriot. But isn't there some irony there, that English accent to have in a place that celebrates the American side of the Revolutionary War?
It's a tricky one. I'm not going to deny it.
You never were like, this should be the Benedict Arnold distillery or anything like that? Or
there's a couple of ways you can look at it. One of them is that technically the English did win the Battle of Brooklyn. So you can approach it from that point of view.
Hang your head on that one. Okay.
I don't think that's a winning argument, though. Not in the long run. It goes back to what I was initially saying about driving around Europe with my dad in his camper van and being taken to, battlefields and cathedrals and all these things that really, I realize now, rubbed off on me. And I think that's why I ended up with an interest in history and with an interest in food and beverage, is exposure to all these things at a relatively young age. And then coming to America and America's not huge on celebrating history. It's more futuristic, right? And more about technology and tearing old things down and building shiny newer things. And I moved to Brooklyn in 2012, I guess just as we were launching Widow Jane. I moved to South Brooklyn, which is right by Prospect Park, which is and as I was chatting to people in the neighborhood, like they would talk about Battle Hill. I'm like, oh, I'm going up the top of Battle Hill. I was like, where the hell is Battle Hill? And it's like, here, this is Battle Hill. You're standing on it. We live at the bottom of it. And they call it that because that's where the Battle of Brooklyn kicked off, really. And that's where the Revolutionary War, the crucible of the Revolutionary War, really, right there. And I realized all of a sudden it's all around us here. And I wanted to focus on rye whiskey for Fort Hamilton, and particularly New York rye. And so when I was tossing names about, I live on Fort Hamilton Parkway, which goes all the way from Prospect Park all the way down to the foot of the Verrazano Bridge, where Fort Hamilton is, which is the Army base, which is still operational today, which defends New York Harbor. And I was thinking, well, if we're doing this original style of rye whiskey, which is, exactly what they would have been drinking 200 years ago, then Fort Hamilton seems like a pretty good name for this, revolutionary style rye whiskey. So yeah, it all kind of coalesced around that, and the history all around us, and making this, old-fashioned style of rye whiskey and trying to bring it back to life, because Prohibition had knocked out all the distilleries in the Northeast and sort of centralized all distilleries down in Kentucky, where they remained post-Prohibition. And, we're trying to bring it back a little bit, decentralize it, and bring back that original style of American whiskey.
And that's fun to see. It's really fun to see, Rosen rye coming back, and the Pennsylvania and Maryland ryes, making a return. It's great. So good stuff.
Yeah.
Like Beth, and we've talked about the fact that you were a bartender. You're pulling those lukewarm pints over in London and serving up shots. Yeah, that's what I could never get used to when I went over the lukewarm beer. I guess I'm too Americanized. I like that nice ice cold beer, but that's, again, the history there is unbelievable. You walk into these pubs that, established 1538, and, it's crazy. But as you came over here and you start getting into American bartending, did you get like Beth, where you're getting creative and creating drinks and stuff like that? Did you evolve to that point?
Yeah, I guess I did somewhat.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
I kind of thought after a while, and I was never as creative as like some of the luminaries who were around me at the time. And I always felt like I was going to do something else other than bartending at some point. But during my time bartending, cocktail bartending specifically, I did get a little crazy. I've been known to get a little crazy with cocktails. Yeah. But I love that there's kind of a rule book to it. I think the Joy of Mixology is one of the books that's written where they really break down the styles of cocktails. And then once you start to understand those styles, you can apply the rules of, like, I think there's like 5 or so different cocktails, right? And then you apply those rules to different cocktails, and you basically have the entire cocktail canon at your fingertips. So I was always more interested in like sort of playing around with the classics and giving them tweaks here or there, with like different ingredients and different nudges in different directions, rather than like trying to reinvent the wheel, like some person using like 27 different ingredients in a cocktail is just a no-no.
Right.
There's a real limit for reasons. There's reasons why there should be limits on these things.
Yeah. All right. Well, guess what? It is now time for McNews Questions. So McNew, what do you have for Alex here?
Okay, so several of our distiller friends have shared stories of like mash overflowing, valves being backwards, just absolute distillery disasters. And I kind of think distilling is like a Murphy's Law kind of profession, like where if it can go wrong, it probably will at some point, but they laugh about it later. Do you have any distillery disaster stories to share with us?
I mean,
could be like a weekly blog.
None
right?
that I want to admit to. I will say there was a funny moment happened, and it's not really a distillery disaster story, but it was like, my newbiness back when we were launching Widow Jane, and we were down in at MGP sourcing barrels of whiskey down there, and I was with Dave Pickerel, the master distiller former master distiller of Maker's Mark, who was helping us out with the distillery, and we were walking through these immense fermenters at MGP, huge wooden-sided beasts bubbling with delicious mash. And Dave looks at me, he says, you should lean over and take a whiff. And I was like, oh, it's a good idea. So I've leaned right over this giant cauldron of mash and took a giant whiff and basically suffocated, because it's a huge joke to people that don't really know the truth, which is
CO2
that,
coming off there.
Sugar plus yeast equals carbon dioxide plus alcohol. So he basically just made me suffocate myself, which I'd call that a disaster. Yeah.
Could be, yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a good one, and incorporates obviously a legend from the industry. So, what was Dave really like? What was that guy like? Because he seems such a likable person, but I didn't know him on a personal basis. I interviewed him for a couple shows, that type of thing. But what was the man like?
I mean, he was a very big-hearted, generous soul, and everyone that worked with him felt the same way. That he was out there when he didn't need to be out there, right? He could have gotten a job anywhere at any distillery in Kentucky, and decided that he was going to go and hit the road and spread the gospel, and did an amazing job of it. And the reason that there's good craft whiskey in America today is 90% down to Dave Pickerel. And if he had
Johnny Appleseed of distilling, right?
100%. The depth of knowledge that he had, that he was willing to share, to turn wannabe romantic startup distillers into reasonably good distillers very quickly, was amazing. And I think you've seen through the evolution of the craft distilling scene, there's now some pretty incredible juice out there. There's also some mediocre juice, of course. But he was the one who started sharing the knowledge that was previously kind of locked up and unattainable unless you happen to be, in with the families down in Kentucky or wherever. And he, was a key player in decentralizing this whole situation and allowing states to kind of take back ownership of distilling in the way that they had owned it in centuries gone by. And he was very generous with that knowledge. Didn't have to be, but chose to be, and was very visionary in doing so. There was no one else out there doing that. It was him.
Right.
And I have some great memories of him. Repeal Day down in Louisville. I remember the first half of the evening. Anyway, man could definitely drink. Drink. Oh yeah, he had no issues there. But and at one time he said to me, and this is how I knew he was a master distiller. And which, by the way, is a term that gets thrown around way too commonly these days. Somebody said to me the other day, they said, master distiller is a term that other people give to you. You don't give it to yourself. And the day I knew that Dave was a master distiller, he was talking about the still that we put in at Widow Jane, and then discussing another type of still that he was putting in at, I think it was the Willet still, and discussing how he basically can visualize his molecules as they're working through the still, and that's how he understands how it's operating and the shapes that are required and all that. And I was like, okay, well, that's the next level business right now.
Right.
He was very, very smart.
Distilling
man.
savant. Yeah, for
very
sure.
Smart man, and generous and fun, and I think he lived the way that he wanted to, and that's a great thing.
Yeah. My dream job does not exist. The dream job for me is commissioner of the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. They don't have, it's all run by, the groups and stuff like that. But they could do better. And somebody like Dave Pickerel absolutely should be in the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. First of all, for his time at Makers, but for what he's done for the industry. Again, this idea that, all ships rise, with the tide. He created the tide that has brought back, the bourbon industry. He's done a lot of that stuff. And, he should be recognized by the Kentucky Bourbon Hall of Fame. And I guess at this point, if he's not, he's not. And I guess at this point, if he's not, he probably never will be. And that's not right. It's not right.
Huh.
Who am I to say? Till they invent that job, and I can run for that and get voted in. Then I can assure you he'll be in there first class. So it'll be nice. How did you learn to distill? So you come into this, you go to Widow Jane, not necessarily big into distilling. They were sourcing a lot of stuff.
Yeah, there was sourcing stuff, but there was also a project whereby we were sourcing heirloom grains, and that was an interesting side project. We used like heirloom corn that hadn't been.
So you got to be hands-on with that, and that's how you started to learn how to distill?
Yeah, I actually, well, I hired Selena, who's now the head distiller over at Great Jones Street in the city, and Leighton, who was head distiller for a while, and then actually he's back brewing beer in LA now. And I was by their side, but they were doing most of the legwork there. But it was very interesting to see how the heirloom grains fared. Some well, some not so well. And the decisions we made about barreling, the effect that they had, all of this, to Beth's point, when someone's talking, just sit back and listen and see what you can hear, and what you can learn from it, what you can glean from it. And you got to remember, back then, a lot of people are flying kind of blind, right? There's and a lot of it is instinct to an extent. And I started playing around with blending as well, and figuring out different mash bills and what works, what doesn't necessarily work. Dave's classic go-to mash bill was like 70 corn, 20 rye, 10 barley. That's what he would give to most distilleries to get them going. And it was a good solid mash bill. But there's so much wiggle room in there, right? With the grains that you use, whether you're using, we started playing around with chocolate malts and, giving these wonderful, deep, rich flavors and undertones to these whiskeys. And then, of course, unlike beer or wine, you've got to wait potentially years before you actually understand the true outcome of your experiments. So, you got to tune in and try different things and see how it's going, and then talk to other people as well. I mean, and that's half the battle of distilling, is learning what other people have done that has gone well or not gone well. And that's why I'm always a huge fan of making friends and keeping friends and sharing information. I think it's one of the most important parts of the business. But listen, I don't pretend to be a master distiller. But when it came to our rye mash bill that I kind of hung my hat on, the chemistry was very good with the percentages that we were using. 90 of the New York winter rye and 10 malted barley just gave us a lot more yield than we were getting with other mash bills. And so when the chemistry is right and it's working in your favor, don't swim upstream, embrace it. And now we've got a 4-year-old, 5-year-old, some 6-year-old whiskeys that are absolutely phenomenal. And of course, there's a lot more to it than just the chemistry of a fermentation.
There's the artistry that's goes.
Yeah, there's artistry in terms of the barrel choice, the way that you age it. There's so many variables involved in distilling that aren't straight up just fermentations and collecting higher proof spirit out of your condenser. There's a million other variables that go into this too, from the sourcing of the grain to the sourcing of the barrels to the temperature of the aging room. And those are all things that we brought to bear with the Fort Hamilton rise, is that we use slightly smaller barrels, these 30-gallon barrels, which actually Dave had a hand in helping me select. At the time, there were not many barrels around when we started, and he opened the door at Kelvin Cooperage for us, without which I wouldn't be sitting here having this conversation with you tonight, probably. And so he was, generous in that sense too. I mean, I wasn't paying him or anything, but he was a rye nut. And when I told him that I was doing it and we were doing this old New York style, he was gung ho for it. So, the barrel selection, the char level, the fact that we're heated, during the winter, which is classically how Northeastern ryes were aged. I noticed you've got an Overhaul 114 next to you.
Yep.
The Overhaul Distillery, there's a wonderful David Wondrich story where it's burning down the rick house is on fire and they don't know what to do. So somebody starts smashing the steam pipes, and the steam puts the fire out. And what's a steam pipe doing in a rick house, right? And then you start to dig into it. You're like, oh, what, they're heating their whiskeys to make them commercially competitive in terms of maturation with whiskeys from down south that have the benefit of warmer summers and warmer winters too. So, we took all that information on board and sort of downloaded it into what has become the Fort Hamilton rye style today. But there's certainly a lot more to it than just yeast plus sugar equals alcohol plus carbon dioxide. Yeah.
So our audience enjoys traveling. They like going to visiting distilleries. Tell us a little bit about what it's like visiting your place.
It is a very cool experience. We opened the distillery for tours, tastings, and cocktails in September. Delayed 2 whole years, thank you, COVID. But we battened down the hatches. We kept growing the brand, and we really built some wonderful traction. Given the problems that were in front of us, we really did overcome them quite well, and just focused on getting into more off-premise locations. Really on-premise, the bars and restaurants, there was nothing really to be done, certainly not around here. So we just focused on more off-prem. We built up our web presence as well, so you can buy everything at forthamilton.com now. Nice. And we launched a tour program in the fall to allow us to get guests into the space, but also if something like Omicron happened, we could also shut things down without having staffed up and put on a full cocktail program and done the whole razzle dazzle. So we kind of used it as a stepping stone. But what's beautiful about it is now we've got this incredible tour program, which is live in Brooklyn, and you get to check out our still. We have a brand new still actually arriving tomorrow morning, so I'm excited about that.
Wow, congrats on that. That's big.
Thank you. It is big. It's a huge milestone for the company. We let you taste whiskey straight from the still, let you taste whiskey straight from the barrel, let you bottle your own bottle of whiskey, which is a unique experience. Yep. You can walk out with it too. We talk about the history of whiskey in America. We talk about the Revolutionary War and how that ties into what we do at Fort Hamilton, the original whiskey style of America, this New York rye that we are recreating now. And the history of Industry City, which is where our distillery is, which has this amazing storied history from the 1800s, which has been a hub of manufacturing and commerce and creativity ever since then. So yeah, and at the end of it all, you get to taste all of our whiskeys and our beautiful bourbon barrel-aged maple syrup, which just got reviewed in the New York Times. It was
wow. That's huge. That is huge.
It was a good one. The phone was ringing off the hook the next day.
Heck yeah, that's nice. What do you like to do outside of whiskey?
Wait, there's something other than whiskey?
Yeah, believe it or not, there's a whole world out there, I think.
Oh my God, it's so long since I thought about anything other than whiskey. It's such an all-consuming project, building a brand. Before whiskey, I'll tell you what I like to do. Yeah, I'm a big fan of football, i.e. a round ball and your foot kicking it. And Crystal Palace is my team from South London. So whenever I have the opportunity, I do like to turn the telly on and watch a little bit of soccer. Music has been a major part of my life. And I'm very proud of my son currently, who's practicing trombone at a music school in the city. So we love to listen to music, go to concerts. Remember concerts? I remember that. Yeah. So much has changed. So yeah, music, football. I'm a man of simple pleasures. I do like to kick back with a cocktail or whiskey, and guilty pleasure would be Pilsner, I guess.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Last question. We always like to do the fun question for the last one. You get a two-parter here. The second part is the important part here. There is a right answer, so we'll see how you do. The two-parter: are M&Ms a candy bar? And it doesn't matter how you answer that. What is the best M&M? What's the best one? And there is a right answer to that. And you and I haven't talked about this. We may be the same.
We might agree for one.
I bet we'll disagree, but we'll see. We'll reveal at the end too.
I'm at the risk of being extremely unpopular.
Okay.
Well, I mean, M&M is definitely not a candy bar.
Okay.
And there, I hate to say this, but especially something that's recorded, I'm going to be in the public domain.
Sure. This is now,
I come from the UK, and I've got to say, our candy game is a little stronger than the American candy.
Oh, come on now.
I'm deadly
like those Necco wafers and stuff. There's no flavor to that. Come on now. That's ridiculous.
Some Canadian candy is better than us too. I'm going to give him this.
Thank you. You see?
You're welcome.
No.
So there's a candy in the UK called Smarties. And
are they different than the Smarties that are here?
Yes, they're chocolate. They're not the thing that ours are. They're very different.
Yeah, that's true.
I don't like the US Smarties. So
they're basically like big M&Ms.
Okay.
So the best M&M, in my opinion, is a Smartie.
Yeah.
Is that a messed up answer? That's messed up.
That is a messed up answer.
Yeah. So Smarties in the US are like these little like chalky things.
Oh yeah. No,
are our Smarties. Yours are very different, and they are better.
Okay. I gotta have a part 3 then. If you had to have a US M&M, what is the best?
I think that actually this did come up. Oh, I like the peanut M&Ms. Does that count?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. That's
for some reason the colors do taste different, right?
Oh yeah, of course.
Why? But they're not technically flavored. It's just that the food coloring tastes different. Is that what it is?
I guess.
I think so. Yeah.
So I think that the least offensive one is the green one.
Okay.
There a green one? There a green peanut M&M? It's been a while. Okay, green.
Yeah, it's green.
I'm going with green.
Famously, there's a green one. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So McNew, what do you think is the best American? I didn't know I didn't have to qualify this tonight. The American M&M. What do you think?
It is the peanut M&Ms, but it's the yellow one.
Okay. I didn't mean to get that specific, but I have to say you two both answered the same way, and you're close. That's the second best. It was always the king, I think, the peanut M&Ms, but the peanut butter ones. Oh man. Once that got invented, that's the best. Yeah, it passed it up.
No, those are like crappy Reese's.
No, they're
gotta
not.
go Reese's Pieces with the peanut butter. Steve.
No, Reese's Pieces are bad. Peanut butter M&Ms are good. There we go. Alex, you were close. You got second place. You got second place there. So not bad.
All right. It's not just like my life.
Yeah. Well, let's hear it for Alex. Thanks a lot for coming on. We appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, guys. Really appreciate it.
Let's hear it for Beth too. Beth, thank you. Appreciate it. We'll wrap this one up by talking about, where we can find anything you want to share, social media. That could be personal, it could be company, whatever you like. Beth, you're first.
Well, you can see my feelings on M&Ms at on Instagram at Bourbon Bella. I have lots of feelings, and also like green M&Ms. There was a lot of things that happened around green M&Ms this year. Anyway, silly stuff. But yeah, you can find me on Instagram at Bourbon Bella, and that's really probably where I do the majority of my work. If you're gonna follow Sunday Port Sessions, it's at the Blend US, and those Sunday Port Sessions will come out once a month.
Okay. Real quick, what is the best M&M?
I mean, I don't know if there's.
You had to say.
That's hard. Mini M&Ms. The minis.
Oh, and the tube.
I love the minis. Not just the tube. Like if you get a little share pack with the minis. Oh, they do.
Those
and there's
bad.
something about the ratio.
Okay.
I'm here for that.
Fair enough. All right. Alex, how about you? Anything you want to share? We're good with whatever you like to plug your business, personal or business, it doesn't matter.
Sure. You can hit up forthamilton.com. We ship across America. $100 gets you free shipping on all of our SKUs, including.
That's a good deal.
It is a good deal.
Shipping can get you. Shipping can get you. So
yeah, free shipping on anything $100 or more. Any mix and match you fancy, and that includes our limited release cask strength rye whiskeys straight out of New York.
Nice.
Check out the Instagram at fort.hamilton.distillery, and that applies to the Facebook too.
All right. McNew, how about you? Where can people find you?
You can find me on Instagram at McNew ABV.
All right, for me, I'm an easy guy to find. I'm at Steve Akley on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. I've got a website, steveakley.com. We've also got a company website. That thing's abvnetwork.com. That's the one you got to check out. Everything that we do is out there. We've got our shop out there, our blogs, our newsletters, our old shows. We got about 3,000 podcasts you can listen to. So much more. Events. Check us out, abvnetwork.com. McNew, anything else to say before we get out of here?
I'd like to ask our audience to please hit that subscribe button for Bourbon Sasquatch on YouTube, where all of our shows will be posted. And when you're watching an episode, give us a thumbs up, leave some comments, and share it. It helps new people find the show, which is very important to us.
Absolutely. All right. Tune in next week. We will be talking to McNew. Who are we talking to next week?
We have Jason Fruits of Old 55 right here in Indiana, and Elba.
Giron.
Pronounce her last name for Giron.
Yeah.
Giron from Maker's Mark.
Very nice. Very nice. Going to be a great show next week. Don't miss out. We'll see you then. Take care, everybody. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.